citizen.
Out of many
We are world citizens, same vision is for equal rights and justice for the people them. What's happening to this beautiful world that we're living in? World citizen, lift up your voice.
Welcome to another episode of the People-Powered Planet podcast, where each week we bring you extraordinary solutionaries, not focusing on the terrible problem so much as what are the solutions? What are the ways we as a people can come together as one planet and create what our founder, Gary Davis, called the People-Powered Planet? So today, I'd like to give a very special welcome to Catherine Cooley, who I met, decades ago, but who's part of our Rotary E-Club of World Peace and is doing some wonderful work in the world. She's a communications coach, trainer, mediator, speaker, facilitator. She's a founder of Peaceabl, spelled like Peaceable, but without the E on the end, so it's easy to search for online. And she's a certified trainer with the Center for Nonviolent Communication. And she also has worked as a facilitator in the Alternatives to Violence project in federal prisons. And in a few moments, we'll get to one of her very moving stories about that. But she now also enables business leaders to have a reliable way to resolve their differences, to build empathetic culture, and use nonviolent communications. Let me first welcome you and let you say a little bit more about why is it so important in the world today. But first, let me give a warm welcome to Catherine Cooley.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arthur, and everybody who's attending and who might listen later. I so appreciate this level of conversation about where we are as a world people and what can be done. Again, the solutions, as you mentioned, Arthur, very, very important and near and dear to my heart, pretty much all of my adult life. So really nice to be here and also to share our membership in the Rotary E-Club of World Peace.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And let's start out with a story. You know, stories move us and are so compelling, and I think that'll help draw us right into the amazing work you're doing. Tell us a little bit more about what happened with your work in the federal prisons.
Yes. Well, Alternative to Violence Project is one of their key phrases is transforming power, right? And embedded in their 3-day, 2.5-day workshop are some key principles from nonviolent, and I wanted to offer a couple names for it because most people, when they hear nonviolent communication, the first thing they say is, I'm not violent. And it's hard to relate, right? So compassionate communication is another one, and then collaborative communication. So
I like that.
yes, it's it really gets to the point of what we're needing and wanting is like peaceful collaboration with each other, ultimately. And so with AVP, that's Alternative to Violence Project, they have embedded in that curriculum some of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, who developed NVC, Nonviolent Communication. They have his teachings on I statements, right? Because in that model, there's a lot of responsibility taking for our own experiences, and so I'll pause in a moment to see if you have any questions at this point, but Arthur, but the key too is that it's a language of the heart. So it matters what we feel, and it matters what the other people are feeling. And then there's a prompt thing, there's a prompt sentence with 2 components that I'd love to share right now, that if you take nothing else from today, that you consider applying this in your life. I feel because I need.
Mm. Mm. So I I feel um, I need to ask you about the work you did in the federal prisons with murderers and rapists and so on.
Yeah.
And I need that because I feel like that's in today we can get so caught up in uh, boy all these terrible people, the them, and I really feel like we need that way to go from that them to us. So tell us a little bit more. What happened when you got an opportunity to go into a prison and to work with people who had committed terrible crimes like murders and rapes and uh, other things?
Yes, thank you. And that was quite an interesting inner journey because I was attracted to becoming a facilitator in prison because I really felt like that as a peace builder, as a longtime peace builder, I felt like if I could bring peace there or help to bring peace there, that's where like the rubber meets the road in peace building because it 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 it's a place of high trauma, high intensity, and so that's what attracted me to expand my craft and jump in that hot water. And it is especially the good, it is this, it's very intimidating to even think about, especially as a woman, right? Going into a men's federal prison. The good news is that I don't know, at least my psyche adapted pretty quickly. Like, yes, I got the danger and the uh intensity of the place. And it is sobering. You don't walk in there like skipping, right? Um, and I tell a story. I have this story on my website, and it's a day where well, usually we have two facilitators from what would they call the outside or the street coming in, and then two inmates on the team, the facilitation team for AVP. And um, one day the other person couldn't come, and the coordinator said, you don't need to do this workshop if you don't want to do it alone. I said, yeah, no, I'm going to do it. And I'm just giving this background because there is a real, it is a real adjustment to make to feel comfortable, engaged, and connected when you're feeling that fear, right? Um, and which I need to do as a facilitator. I need to be comfortable, engaged, and feeling connected, right? And so about 18 men, like just like the arms crossed, like mostly looking at the floor. And I'll just say that I think what helps me bridge that gap between fear and engagement is my profound faith in the tools we bring, not just with Alternative to Violence Project, but my own training in nonviolent communication. And so when we got to the I statements part of it, one of the men brought up a story, not a story, and this was an experience that he had. He was pretty enraged because on a phone call he had found out that his girlfriend had cheated on him. And then even as he was describing this and using using some pretty disparaging language about her, about the situation, we moved into the I statement. Like I said, it's about taking responsibility. I feel because I need. right? And that's not an easy leap. That takes some practice. However, it's the core of empathy. That is really what empathy is getting someone's world of feelings and needs. The way I look at it and the way the NVC community looks at it is that everything we do is to meet our needs, our universal human needs. And that's what he was doing when he was raging about her. And that's what she was doing. She was servicing her needs when she did what she did, when she cheated on him, right? But it's a real process of like facilitation and slowing down, which by the way, Arthur, I really appreciated how you just closed your eyes and tuned in at the beginning. I think that's one of the most important things, tools of conflict resolution, is slowing things down and re-regulating our nervous systems. So, because mostly when we approach conflict, we're in fight or flight. And nothing productive is going to happen there. Nothing connecting can happen when people are in fight or flight. So, slowing things down there with this man and helping him to self-connect. So helping him and, to see like, how did this feel? And then with NVC, the I feel because I need, the core of that is this realization that our feeling body, our hearts, right, our emotional bodies are a compass. They're a compass that's pointing us to either our needs are being met right now in this conversation, in this moment together, or my needs aren't being met. And usually the compass is kind of flipping around because we often have both things happening.
Mm.
So it's an art and a practice to be able to discern our feeling body, because we've been taught that we're not supposed to feel. We've been taught it means that we're weak. We're at least inconvenient to the situation. No one wants to be with emotions. And this is especially true in business. It's even more exaggerated, these roles, I would say, than in our private lives. So he was able to calm down. I mean, there was still like, doubt in him, or like maybe some confusion, but in this process of getting self-connected. But it did shift something energetically, and also with the men around, because the men around were like totally like fueling his fire. And then here was the thing. This was the big shift, was like, okay, so she cheated. Why? What needs was she trying to meet? And bringing curiosity into what someone's needing is the core of this. Why, right? Moving aside our judgments and our emotions about it, and just going, why was this person, what needs? And so as a group, we thought about it. Was it a need for connection, right? She might be very lonely in her life right now. Was it a need for or connection or companionship, right? Maybe even a need for like affirmation, like or acknowledgement of who she is as a person, some kind of positive attention on her right now. And the big thing to notice there in this empathy process is that we're not in any way, and this took a few rounds, we're not condoning what she did. We're not saying it's okay. We're just getting her world for a moment. We're just walking in her shoes for a little bit. And so what that does is that's what makes that heart connection. Because every single man in that room had the same universal needs. They need positive attention and affirmation from people in their world. They need companionship. They need some kind of friendship, companionship, energy in their lives to to be able to be well, right? Our human needs, the way I test if it's a human need is, do we really need that to be healthy and well? If I never had positive regard from someone again or positive attention, could I lead a healthy and well, healthy and happy life? No. So so that was an important piece where they could see and feel the power of having some empathy. Whenever you do that, and I recommend everybody do that today, do a thought experiment of a place where you have a conflict or an upset with somebody. Give yourself empathy first, please, and then shift over. How do they feel? What are they needing in our interactions? And see if you don't feel both a mental, an emotional, and energetic shift in how you would approach the situation.
Hmm. Well,
And so we
that's
can
a
go,
great thing for each of us to try right now, is just to experience that empathetic shift. And I see I see we have a comment. Every single thing we do in life should come from that kind of uh, empathetic communication that you're talking about doing. And so it helps stem these problems at the beginning. So, well, first of all, did he in that Pacific story get to have a compassionate communication with uh, the girlfriend he'd broken up with, or was it too late for that? Was it more an internal
right,
process?
I didn't have follow through on that. But what I'm imagining, Arthur, is that when he did talk to her, or even when he talked to other people about the situation, there was a new lens on it, a new possibility. And of course, they're in a workshop, so they learned other things in that workshop that that help them shift as well. So I'm sure that both he and she were way better off for his skills because see, this is the thing. If we don't do that, then we stay in that rage state. If we don't self-connect, if we don't connect with her. And by the way, she wasn't there, of course, but oh, hey, hi, Barbara. She wasn't there to talk to, but the very next step for him in life, in a situation like that, would be to take those empathy guesses we made and create a dialogue with her. So that he could better understand, was this what you were after? Was this what you were trying to to get in your life that wasn't happening for you?
Hmm.
And
Well,
then, and then he could reveal how he was feeling about his needs. And then only after that heart connection and clarity around needs, then they can go into solution mode. Like, hey, my solution is I never want to see you again or talk to you again. I mean, maybe that's still how he's going to feel, but, but maybe not. And with collaborative communication, we the the fourth step of this process is request making, and requests are basically experiments to meet our needs. So how do we meet his need for loyalty and integrity and kept agreements? At the same time, how does she meet her need for like rich connection or, like meaningful connection with people? And then that's a dialogue.
mhm,
But basically, both people are coming to the table with 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 the needs of each side clearly articulated, with the feelings regulated at that point. And now they can start getting experimental. Like, what can we do from here?
mhm,
What agreement can we make with each other? And so what I call that is a needs team. And when I work with people, especially in my one-on-one programs, it's all about helping them to become a needs team with whether that's at work or at home with people, so that there's like this general understanding and agreement. We're all ahead of the game as social animals. This is just so about human villages, right? We're all ahead of the game when we collaborate and cooperate on meeting needs.
Hmm.
And one of the ways I like to phrase that is there's really no such thing as a happy village with unhappy people with a lot of unmet needs in it. And aren't we seeing that?
Yes. So yes, that leads right into that next question. Aren't we seeing that in the world, a very unhappy village with a lot of people whose needs aren't being met, not only in the United States, but in numerous places around the world? Tell us a little bit more about how the kind of work you're doing, you see, can help us in dealing with the incredible divisions and separation and lack of empathy happening in many parts of the world.
One of the first things that when that I'll say about that is that when people have needs awareness, or I like to call it human needs literacy, we start to think differently. So there's a lot of in the media, the way the media talks about issues, the way people in the issues talk to each other or to us, there's a lot of confusion, right? And back and forthing. And if you take any issue, well, what Dr. Marshall Rosenberg used to say, he had a 4-word description of painful conflict, right? Conflict not managed well. 4 words: unmet needs, tragically expressed. And that is what we're seeing all over the place, almost in especially every political issue or even economic, environmental issues. And it's tragic on 2 levels, right? It's because people like say when someone's criticizing or the other side or blaming them, there's a lot of blame and criticism. Those would be examples of tragic expressions of unmet needs. Because what happens to us as people is if someone blames me, energetically, a part of me does go into fight or flight. It's a threat on my psyche. It's a psychological threat. So what happens is people just get caught in that fight or flight whirlwind rather than going to the root of the conflict, which is those unmet needs. And so I have a belief that if more of our citizenry had this needs awareness, started looking at their lives, both personally, professionally, politically, from the needs lens, our conversations would be a lot more clear and they would go to the heart of the matter. We hardly, in these public dialogues and conversations, they're not even dialogues, these public emotings,
Mm,
I call them, we don't ever get to the heart of the issue,
mm,
which are the unmet needs. And the thing, you really see that when people are campaigning and slandering each other or whatever. Like, it's like this huge smokescreen thing. Getting caught up in the tragic expression of our needs, the blame, criticism, making wrong. That that oh, first of all, when we're in fight or flight, we don't even have access to our highest thinking powers, just neurologically, what brain scientists tell us. Um, so so I would say that in our society in the United States, people spend a lot of time in fight or flight. and they don't have the skills and practices to do that pause, as I was mentioning before in the prison story, the slowing things down. So pausing and returning later when you're regulated is one of the most important things that we can do. And honestly, I have never seen anyone in the public sphere be in a challenging conversation and pause or ask for a pause.
That's a very, very, very good question for us to think of, and we will pretty shortly move to questions from everyone. But that leads me right into, as you were talking about that, I had this feeling, here's this world where where the social media and so on is pitting us against each other, telling the worst of the other side,
Yes.
and a system that's kind of a race to the bottom, and we have a world whirling toward its own self-destruction because we are so divided and separated. And I think years ago, before we even made the movie "The World Is My Country," in which Gary Davis talks about the people-powered planet, you got to meet Gary, and now we have that movie about him. And what he was picturing is kind of a world in which small groups like this Zoom, but of people on opposite sides of issue, use this kind of collaborative communication tools to deal with topics, not with, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, but with what are our needs, and what is the vision we have for the future, and what kind of a future do we want, and come together by telling our stories into these small groups that interact with other small groups and are somehow amalgamated into the will of the people of the planet, which of course is what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says, that the will of the people shall be the basis of government, and almost every constitution says that. How do you see or evolve a vision, if you had a vision of how these tools could be used to help create a whole different, invent a whole different new way of kind of running this world? What would you see in that vision? Would you see that this could be an applicable model to creating something better than the current race to the bottom?
And how? Yeah, yes. I I mean the first thing that came to mind as you were speaking that, Arthur, is collaborative communication starting in kindergarten. And because it really does need to be, the skills and the practices need to be embedded and embodied. And that's one of the things that why some empathy programs don't work that great in corporate. Some really do, some don't. I happen to find an amazing mentor with a beautiful model that's very what I would call embodied. The first of the 9 modules is return to calm and focus.
Hmm.
And then about the fourth module is listening with generosity. And the intention of listening, because each of this program, 3x3 empathy factors that I bring to companies, it is based on micro behaviors and also on shifting our intention. So listening with generosity, the practice is you've just shared something with me. And of course, I don't do this every time, but when it's an important topic or circumstance, I reflect back what I'm hearing. It's also called reflective listening. So I reflect that back to make sure I'm getting what you said. Like it's estimated 30 to 50% of what's spoken is not heard and understood as it was intended. And so this is a big piece. And then, of course, the return to calm and focus needs to happen the very first thing, or I'm not even going to be able to listen generously to you.
Mhm. When you're in a war situation, I mean, it's just almost impossible not to be in fight or flight because you are, and literally
Oh, definitely.
okay, so go ahead. So tell us a little more about how you see applying that.
The reason I chose to shift my practice towards corporate and larger organizational work is because my belief is that much of our economic and political and environmental circumstances are being orchestrated or influenced by corporations and organizations. So if I really want to bring peace into the world, it's one of the most important places to start. And then secondly, if I were working in a war zone, the first thing I would do would be to help the people there that I have connection with, that want my help, to learn self-empathy and to learn it as a daily practice. And I think maybe there's a little confusion about that. I think people worry, well, self-empathy, isn't that just me wallowing in my stuff? And it's really not. It's you getting cleared out from the fight or flight emotional stuff and getting clarity on forward motion, because the forward motion needs to be needs-based. It needs to, ideally, to be effective, you want your forward motion to be experiments towards meeting the needs involved.
Well, I'm so fascinated by what you said is that clearly the disruptions that are happening in the world today and the terrible lack of empathy is being caused by the corporate system, which has psychopathic tendencies built into very core, which is
Yeah.
you have to maximize profit, no overall concern for social good,
Yeah.
and no compassion. It's a compassionless structure. I mean, the people may have compassion, but the structure itself is not modeled on compassion. Um, so, what are some of the examples of breakthroughs you've made in how to shift the culture, corporate culture, to a new empathetic way of interacting?
Great. Thank you for the question, Arthur. And I'd like to start with by sharing a recent experience with the leadership team at a charter school. And then I'd also like, after that, to say a little bit about some good news on the corporate front, which to me is the B corporations, and also what's called the conscious capitalism movement. Originally, a lot of people like to call it conscious business.
Mhm.
Because for many people, the word capitalism is an immediate red flag, and there's really good reasons for that, as we know, I think. So in the charter school, um, the two of the main leaders were at this point, and this is often the point where people come to me. It's because, wow, driving to work feels like horrible. Like I've got to face the situation. There were fears that the other person was sabotaging this person in her board relationships, and there was this uh like tug of war between who has responsibility and authority where. And part of that was kind of some confusion, honestly, in their org chart uh, that had been handed down by the founder. And so there were various things, but initially there was a lot of tension. And so we did level one of the 3x3 empathy factors. And that was basically probably like two, about 2 days of full days of training, maybe a little more. And by the end of that time, because they had been like avoiding each other, not meeting with each other. And by the end of that time, the relationship was on a whole different footing. And that ripples everywhere. That ripples to all their teams, that impact ripples to the school community. It's a really big deal. yeah, to the board. So, and now, and that was the other thing, like now they feel like a real team when they speak to the board.
Mm.
And that was definitely not happening before. Again, there's this concern, like there's, gosh, if something's going on underfoot, I don't know what it is. Am I going to get fired? There was like that kind of energy.
I'm very touched by the story of people coming together within this school community, and it's a good model for how we can move it forward. But of course, the school is not necessarily uh, the first thing we think of when we think of the corporate structure and the terrible worldwide problems coming out of uh, they're controlling things in a destructive way. Are there some other examples with actual businesses that are more in the business of making a product and maximizing profit? Uh,
More retail. Yes, I worked with two founders recently who it is a man and a woman, and they of a product sold internationally, and they they had a wow, it was amazing what we cut through in like a 2 hour session. And this is a little footnote I just want to add for everybody. I think most people haven't had the experience of a really skillfully led conflict resolution session. And so they don't really, I would say they what happens with that is they underinvest in having some sessions in terms of what can keep for the long run. I've helped people who had like 15-year conflicts brewing at a company, and in 1 or 2 sessions we cut through it.
hmm.
So so I so in this case it was so interesting. It was actually partly a gender issue because at when she was in her more emotional cycle, she just really resented and disliked and bristled at the way he would try to problem solve about the company's issues, because he has this like devil's advocate kind of way to go. And for her, it was putting her in fight or flight, like all the time. And so we created some experiments, and I love it. I love it when my clients do their homework. We created some request experiments that just worked beautifully for them to shift that dynamic. And the thing is, that's like one issue, right? That's like when we're brainstorming, I hate this. But then what happens is that ripples. I'm starting to avoid. And with some people, depending on, their communication skills, they're starting to kind of team build and complain about it over here and avoid over here. And pretty soon, your connection is almost broken.
It's really great to hear how you're empowering ways of actually resolving conflicts that have gone on for even over a decade, and people find a way to break through and work as a team. Wow, do we need that in the world? I'm going to turn it over now to Melanie for a question period. But I could ask you hundreds of questions, but let's move it now to questions from our listeners.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Arthur and Catherine. I think everyone was just like absorbing all this information, all these tools. I'm thinking right now of a lot of people are going to rallies.
Yes.
So I feel like I have to go to a rally because I need to be heard. There's so many different reasons why people are going to, gathering together to try to strengthen their power as the people power. And so you're out there at these rallies with your group or whatever, and it can get pretty heated. Now I'm going to do a empathy guess at the person who sees a bunch of people with different signs maybe it's something you don't agree with. So you're like, so you go into that, because they're like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, ah. And so then you're angry, and then there's no communication, there's no dialogue. But at the same time, these rallies are useful to, show that people are gathering together, not happy. It's an important tool, but you're not able, it's not a discussion area. So my question I have is, so at these rallies, you kind of, you want to have them, but do you have any suggestions? I'd like to get people just to sing beautiful songs like the Singing Revolution,
Oh,
that, and
yeah.
then how, from that other's perspective of that person who suddenly sees a group and is afraid and is angry, and they're not going to change their mind anyway. How could you help us? What kind of tips can you give us to deal with this kind of a situation?
We need to start recognizing when we're in fight or flight, which is when we're angry, we're in fight or flight.
Mm.
If we're angry about it, it's not the time to communicate with anybody. It's the time to communicate with myself.
Mm.
And it's the time to get in touch with my needs for democratic process, or my needs for alignment and unity or solidarity, which would be probably coming up for someone who saw a sign from the opposite side.
Mm.
And then on the broader compassion level, that principle that the person with the opposite sign is trying to meet their needs. And that's your common ground. And what's crazy about when we find our common ground, it's usually so similar. That person is thinking they're bringing more safety or maybe more order in the government, to meet their needs for order. They have their own ideas about how, like, what a good order of governance would be or is, right? But the reason that they care about that is that, well, order is a human need, um, uh, but also a sense of security. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of people's underlying needs is that they're feeling very insecure and vulnerable, and they're doing their best with tragic strategies often to meet their needs for security. So in that moment, the way I would coach that person is, again, self-connection. And if they reach a point where they can then shift over in their mind and their heart to making empathy guesses for the other person, and they're authentic. Judgments might come up, but then with this tool, we realize that any judgment I might have about that person, underneath that judgment is an unmet need of mine.
Mm.
So if they have a regulated nervous system, and one of the test points of that is I can authentically extend in my mind and heart empathy for this person. Just how do I think they feel, and about their needs, how their needs are being met or not being met right now. And if I can do that, then I'll go over and have a dialogue or a conversation, or make the connection. Without empathy, I don't want connection, because it's just going to end in violence, whether psychological, physical, either way.
Wow. Yes, and I've been telling people to try to find the other show your humanity to that other person. For example, there was a gentleman who was just saying, "I'm a Nazi. I want to kill, kill, kill." Basically just the word "kill" over and over. And I had a really sweet dog with him, and I said, "What? So what brings you joy?" And he just like
Yes.
was so surprised. And then later he said, "I didn't come here for that." But we did have a connection. We saw each other later at the dog park, and I said hi. And yeah, so it's an interesting time where people are trying to get their voices out there. But I see that you like the singing idea, so maybe that's,
I love the singing
yeah, good,
idea.
good,
Oh,
good, good, good.
absolutely.
Perfect.
In fact, well, let me just say one more thing about that guy. Um, your friend there, which is that what you did when you said, what brings you joy, is you shifted, like he was probably very anchored again in meeting his needs for security or order, right? And you brought in another human need right there. Joy. What about if what about if you or we were to focus on what brings us joy right now? And how might we experiment with that?
Mm,
Where would that take us in our connection? Where would that take us in our efficacy of our work, right?
mm.
Them on their side, my work on my side, right?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Love that. Oh, great. Now, we have some more questions coming in, so we'll go ahead and I'll ask David Gallup to ask the next question.
Catherine, thank you so much for all that you're doing to promote compassionate communication. It warms my heart. I feel like what makes a good world citizen is someone who can be compassionate and can do responsive or active listening, as well as communicating. And I know this was many, many years ago and at much lower stakes than what you were doing in the prison system, but I was a resident advisor and we went through at my university, and there were 30 or 40 other students on the floor that were sort of my responsibility. And we had literally weeks of preparation prior to the students coming in for this semester to learn about compassionate communication, and using those I feel statements were so important for me to be able to sort of maintain the level of responsibility that I had to, so that the students could feel safe but also express their concerns. And what I learned from that, and what I'm relearning from you hearing about this, is that when you say you make me mad, or you use you statements, right? All it is doing is blaming, and it just increases the conflict, right? And when I relearned from you today is that I can only know what's going on in my mind, right? And so if I'm using an I feel, even if I'm angry, I could say I feel angry because I felt like I was discriminated against, or I was rejected, or whatever it was. But it puts the all on me, so then it makes the person think, well, is that what happened? And it's almost like begging the question, am I right about my own feeling to that person? And it opens the door to them to say, well, I feel, so I love that. I love that. And thank you so much for reinvigorating my love for compassionate communication as a world citizen.
That's fantastic. Thank you, David. And it's I I would say that that you really hit it, that this permission giving by sharing your feelings, which is a vulnerable thing, you give permission to the other person. So you can bridge the disconnection that's been happening between you. And then there's some nuances, maybe at a later time, but with the I statements that can really help you clarify. And because if I say something like, I felt I forget what you had said. I felt like I was
I
being,
was I felt like I feel angry because I feel I was being rejected. Yeah.
yes, that particular, maybe we don't want to go into this finery, but it actually is pretty important. Someone can hear that defensively because someone can immediately in their brain hear, he thinks I'm rejecting him.
Right. Yeah.
So it'd be better to go a little bit under that. We would call it rejection, like a thought or judgment, like an evaluation or some sort. So go directly to the need would be
Mhm.
more like, I feel, I noticed I felt angry because I really need inclusion.
Okay. Yeah. So much more positive way to put it. I love that.
And way less likely to be met with defensive energy.
Yes.
And yeah,
Excellent.
it's
Yeah.
positive and clear and more psychologically safe for you.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to incorporate that in my feelings. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank
Wonderful.
you.
And Catherine, we're getting close to the hour. Do you have time for two more questions?
Yes, yes. Happy to stay
You do?
over a
Great.
little if
Okay,
other
Sutiti.
people want to do that.
Yes, Sutiti, great. You're up.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the stalwarts. Oh, and I'm so happy. I'm Shrutiti and I'm from Rotary International District 3291. And I'm
From
so
where
elated
again,
by,
Suti? From where
yeah,
again?
I'm from India and from Calcutta, from eastern part of India. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you're in
And
Rotary International.
yeah,
Yes,
right.
fantastic.
So the thing is like it's a very hot and happening discussion that's happening today, and I'm elated by the fact that these kind of discussions are happening. Finally, it's happening because it is to do with mental health. It is taking so much time to understand, to make people understand that mental health is a very important component. It is one of the key areas that needs to be addressed. And health, if you want a good health, you have to have a good mental health. So, coming to conflict resolution, I think it's a very interesting topic. And all of us, I think whoever is here in this group will agree with me that we have all faced conflicts in our own personal, professional, and everywhere in our corporate life. So,
Yes.
I think personally, I have two questions for you, but I would like to make a comment. I think it's very important because when it comes to conflict resolution, I think two very important thing that works for me that I keep in mind before I go for the process is respect. Whether that respect is there between two people to have that conversation, first of all, mutual respect. And the second one is whether that person is matured enough to, even grasp what I'm going to say, whether that person is that maturity level is there, no matter what the age is. So always I keep these two minds uh, in my mind before I go for conflict resolution. So
Yes.
my question to you is, how much do you think mutually respecting each other how much it is important for in resolving conflicts? That is my first question. And second, because you've been doing so much of trainings, I'm so like happy to know that you're doing such incredible amount of work. And how in a war-like situation, when there's a lot of tension between countries, and how conflict resolution, how much success does it, or what role does it play in resolving conflicts? How much role, what are the tricks that needs to be applied when there's a war-like situation between two countries and we want to bring peace, but there's no way out, and there's some kind of mediation that is needed. So I would like to know that from your side. And thank you for such happening discussion I was really enjoying your conversation. So thanks to Arthur sir and Melanie for organizing this conversation that was very engrossing for all of us. I'm confident about. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sutihi. Um, yeah, so much there. You mentioned the respect, and also you called it like what's their maturity level, or like what's their I used the word capacity. And then I also want to weave in another distinction about, so we definitely have to meet people to where their capacity is. And I want to say that even when the trust or even the respect isn't there, there are some careful avenues of empathy dialogue that you can take to start bridging that gap of respect. So I just wanted to name that. And in terms of the war zone, I have not worked at the international level of mediating governments. So it's above my pay grade, so to speak, in that regard. And yet, so many of the same principles apply. And what there needs to be for anyone to mediate, like if you're going to bring someone to mediation, if there is not the willingness, if there's not even as important as willingness is intention. We really need to understand, what is someone's intention here in this mediated process? Are they really here to repair? Or are they here to like get some kind of agenda over, or to do some kind of like power move? Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, very much. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Yes, you're so welcome. Thank you for the question and thank you for being here.
Yay. And then if all the folks that get into positions, I mean, we all kind of get into positions where we have we're making the decisions. So if leaders in countries had in kindergarten or all throughout school learned all this, it would be a no-brainer. It would be so easy. We'd all be speaking in a relaxed manner and listening and respecting and trying to figure out a win-win. It'd be great. So hopefully we can carry this on and everybody here can carry this on in your realms. So let's go to Claire. Claire, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, I'm very happy that you're working in conflict resolution. I'm hoping that people can realize that it is a wonderful profession. And I wonder what you think about persons. Both sides, for example, can go to this person expecting to be defended. And then they'll find out, well, the other side has an interesting way of looking at things too. So does this in-between person have usefulness?
Yes, I believe third party, hopefully skilled and not set on an outcome, right? Not invested in the outcome. In other words, neutral as possible. They teach us in mediation school, nobody's neutral ever, but we move towards that ideal. So that's what I think would be important in that position. But whatever kind of skills the ombudsman has picked up and has embodied, especially not just up here, that is going to help them. It's going to help both sides to clarify. It's one of the most important things we do in mediation is to help the other person on the quote other side understand the viewpoint and with nonviolent or collaborative communication, we would say the needs, right? See that the needs in a mediated situation are one thing, but what people and they need to be clarified. We in mediation we call that the interest of the party. They need to be clarified before we go into solution mode, which would be the position of the other party. Because when we enter a conflict, quite often we have something in mind. We have an agenda. We have an outcome or outcomes that we want. And so we've been taught to kind of like drive the conversation that way. With this process, you make sure that the mediated process, especially an NVC-based one, you make sure that the interests are clarified first and that there's some kind of connection to this other person's humanity. They have some kind of understanding, given their circumstances, why they may have made those choices. Kind of like in the prison story. I really needed him to spend a little time in her camp.
Beautiful. Yay. So it looks like you're still not rushing off. So I have a quick question that was in the chat.
Sure.
Okay, two little ones. How to make asking for a pause not come across as a sign of weakness or be weaponized against the person who asked for a pause.
Yes, or a sign of avoidance, right? Yes. So the way I teach the pause skill is pause, promise to return.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
And if I've pressed pause, it's on me to schedule the return.
Excellent.
And in my pause, I'm doing some homework. I'm giving myself empathy and I'm making empathy guesses about their situation.
Oh, good. And speaking of homework, Kyle wants to know, what homework did corporate clients get from you, Catherine? I'd like to hear the process sample if that's quick. Otherwise, everyone knows her website is right there in the chat, Peaceabl with no e.com. But would you like to respond to that a little bit?
Yes, and can I just say also, when you're on my website, there's a resources page and you can get a feelings list and a needs list, both either kind of the one that Center for Nonviolent Communication puts out, but it's kind of like for personal general use, and then one that's a little bit more refined towards organizations and companies. So go ahead and get that. And then there's also Heart Talk, which is a 2-page handout. And then of course, join my community. I would love to have you. There's a 2-page like summary of a lot of the key steps and principles that I've talked about. So, what was the other thing?
So the little sample. So it sounds like your website has everything. So everything, and they can connect with you and things like that, and join the community. And is there any other
really
anything else that they should know? Another place they should reach out to you, or the
I think
website's
the
good?
website's the best,
Okay.
honestly. I mean, I am on LinkedIn and
LinkedIn too. Okay, good. Okay. Deep appreciation and rich conversation, great, amazing tools. Look how I'm talking now. I just feel so peaceful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to send it back to Arthur. Arthur, take it away, please.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you so much for an extraordinary experience with you and getting a chance to enjoy your and feel the compassionate communication that you do have with all of us and with everyone. We really appreciate it. We do want to just welcome people each and every week to the People Powered Planet podcast. If you're not a subscriber, we'd love you to subscribe, to actually become you get 2 months free, and then it's only $10 a month, and that helps sustain us to be able to carry on this important work and bring you such terrific guests. Again, thank you so much. We look forward to continuing to carry on and to see you at our Rotary E-Club of World Peace. And thank you so much for joining us. And please go ahead and give us your final comments or words.
I just wanted to say that if add an additional resource, and it's on my website, but if you are in a sticky situation that really matters to you, in a relationship that matters with you, and you think you might want some help with it, a complimentary session, of course, a discovery call with me. Welcome to do that.
Wow, you get a complimentary call with Catherine. Wow. Go ahead and do that, everyone. So tell us exactly how we get a complimentary call with you.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. So rather than everyone doing it, because that would be pretty overwhelming, what I'd like is for the people who think they actually might want to do some work on their situation, right? Who actually want some help with it and want to hear an approach. And it doesn't mean that you need to, just but not like for like a learning session on the techniques or the skills. Does that make sense? Although if you want to put a workshop together in your community, I'd love to do more like skill building work with people more generally. Such a huge thank you for your work, Arthur, and for your passion and commitment to your work. It's phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us. And I'm thrilled that you actually got to meet Gary years ago and to watch the movie about him. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on the People Powered Planet podcast.
World citizen, lift up your voices. Oh, you know we got something to say. All we need is the same directions, heading in one way.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video.